The New Orleans Saints head into the rookie camp with the question at quarterback seemingly answered for at least 2025. Or so they thought until this morning. Want to find out what questions have now been raised and why they've been raised? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Pro Style.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Dutch! Don't do it! Woo! No way! Woo! 85! Crying out loud! You're making me, you're driving me nuts!
But behold,
Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all so much for joining us yet again on another edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Of course, you're gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo, and I just want to let you guys know that there have been some movement going on in the NFL, and I also have a show that is going to be out that's going to be dealing with the Shedeur Sanders incident or the Shedeur Sanders fall in the NFL draft, as well as dealing with the trade heard around the NFL of George Pickens to the Cowboys. I will give you both sides of how it benefits and how it hurts each team and who wins this trade. I will give you two shows based on George Pickens, what the Steelers didn't do and what they could have done to make the situation better, and what the Cowboys plan to do to make the situation work for them. But as I said, we've got breaking news out of New Orleans, and if you guys have seen my short, I was capable of breaking this right at the same time that Adam Schefter broke it. As I've said, I had the ability to see that Adam Schefter was... I knew, if you guys watch my show, I haven't done many shows as of late, but if you watch my Carolina Panthers show, Growlin' and Prowlin', I mentioned this. I felt like George Pickens was going to get moved, and the only question was it going to be before the draft? And I thought the Steelers would be able to get absolute bank compensation for George Pickens. But Pickens has not helped his cause over the 3 years he's been in the National Football League with his antics. So I thought, me being a Carolina Panther fan, I thought for sure the Panthers were going to jump all over Pickens and solve their Teteroa McMillan problem, but instead they just chose to go Teteroa McMillan. So, but I will go into that on the Growlin' and Prowlin' show because no one wants to hear about the Carolina Panthers until they start winning. But to talk about a situation that has been reverberating through the league all day is the retirement of Derek Carr. Now, to a lot of people, this is a shock because there was money implicated in this. There was a lot of money, and I think they said he got $10 or $12 million because he made the roster as a roster bonus earlier in March. So what made it surprising is that they're saying that he was probably going to be put on IR anyway, but he instead wanted to retire and give up $30 million. So I think that begs to question what was going on with Derek Carr, what the relationship between Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints. I think we had started hearing reports that there was a possibility that the Saints were looking to go in different directions. And of course, Derek Carr wanted to, basically in a nutshell, wanted a fresh start. I don't think he saw himself as not being the answer of this franchise. And I think the Saints were looking to go in a different direction, which is a shock considering they did take Tyler Shuck, which, Saints fans, I'm not sitting here saying that Tyler Shuck is a bust. I'm not saying he's a scrub. I'm not saying he's any of those things. I am simply saying that he is an older quarterback, and there's going to be little to no margin for error when you get to a certain age and you're in the National Football League. You have to be on that learning curve. And when you're already, 25, 26 years old, as Shuck is, and as his injury history or as his med papers would dictate to you, he is a guy that has struggled staying healthy. But there's no doubt that you look at Louisville and how it was resurrected. Now, they had a pretty good defense, but they've always had this guy bringing them to the table when it comes to the big time play teams. If you guys watched Louisville, and me being a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, I got to see Louisville twice. And I saw when Shuck and company, when they shucked their way through the Irish into probably in one of the probable biggest upsets of the season. And when you start looking at what this guy brings to the table, it's a huge deal. But however, I don't think the Saints drafted with Shuck in mind to not start. I think ultimately between the two that they were looking at in Shedeur Sanders and Tyler Shuck and even Jackson Dart, I think ultimately they were looking at a guy who could possibly start day one. That's just my take on it. If there's if there's any of you out there who think any differently, please get in the comments. But I ultimately believe this is why the Saints went in this direction. They feel like this guy is a day one ready starter. And I mean, we even heard Adam Schefter say it. A lot of his mistakes in college were forced throws, or you call them bad decisions or reckless decisions. Some of the same things that hindered Cam Ward, but we saw him go number one. But I think ultimately Shuck, if he came out 2 years ago, when he was maybe 23, 22 years old, this would not even be an argument. This guy would have been a top 10 pick. Which, in my opinion, you're still going to get anywhere from 10 years out of this guy if he turns out to be a quality starter. So, but getting back to Derek Carr, we look at this retirement and we say, does this really hurt the Saints this year? And the answer to that question is no, because we ultimately thought that Derek Carr, and we've known this for almost a month, maybe 2 months, that Carr was probably going to be done for the 2025 season with that shoulder injury that we still not sure where this happened at. I mean, it could have happened at the tail end of 23. Many say he played most of 24 with it. And, it's one of those things where you just kind of, I don't know whether or not the Saints forced their hand with this or what. There's going to be a lot of things that come out about it, and I will follow up on it. But the real issue here with Derek Carr is, in my opinion, is I think he retired because he felt like he had more to offer, and he did not want to play out the duration of his contract. So in essence, it cost him $30 million this year, and I'm not sure, and probably the rest of his contract. But I think he's done after this year, if I recall correctly. Somebody correct me in the comments. But looking here, Derek Carr still got a couple of years left on those. He's got a little bit of tread left on those tires. So it would not surprise me if he retired and unretired. Or the rumor is he goes in, talks, speaks a little whisper into somebody's ear, and all of a sudden they make it look like Derek Carr. They talk Derek Carr out of retirement. But Saints fans, I wouldn't worry too much, even though I'm a rival in your division rival. But I honestly think that the way this team is being built, they're being built to not necessarily rebuild, but they're rebuilding the offensive line. As I said, they've still got a lot of holes on there, but they're doing a great job as far as the defensive side of the ball. You basically get Jonas Sanker, who was a guy that our organization was looking at to drafting, and they snatched him up in the third round. This was a guy that was looking like a fourth round pick, and I think the Saints jumped, but I think at the same time, I think they realized that this safety group was so slim that they just had to take a move on this, which is, it could possibly, he's sitting 1 year. And a lot of people say he draws comparisons to who else? Honey Badger. So it could be one of those where he's sitting back watching. But the big loss of Adebo is going to be a major issue for the Saints. They're going to have to find somebody to replace that guy, because now you've lost Lattimore and Adebo back to back. So the Saints secondary is looking kind of thin, but then you also can take heart that you got Justin Reed in free agency. And you retain, of course, we're able to retain Honey Badger. But I think ultimately when you've got the speedy type weapons that the Saints have, of course, you have Cedric Wilson and Brandon Cooks that you brought in from free agency. And you ultimately have the speedy weapons that you have returning from injury last year. So ultimately, I think this could be a way that the Saints go ahead and they're able to withstand this. I think they have not a total blowout season, but I think ultimately this is going to be like a repeat of last season. And I think the Saints end up probably getting a top 10 pick. And ultimately, you are going to have to get another lineman. I think you ultimately have to get another lineman. I think you really need to start looking into the defensive line of the Saints. And of course, they did answer that with a Vernon Broughton out of Texas. But I think ultimately you're going to have to, the next few picks, since you got Tyler Shough, you're hoping if you're a Saints fan, and I will say this, I think Shough is a good quarterback considering you've got Kellen Moore over there. I think Kellen Moore being that dude, what he was able to do and what he was able to accomplish, he's going to be the reason why if Tyler Shough takes off, he's going to be the reason why. Much like with Bryce Young and Dave Canales. So, once again, Derek Carr retires from the New Orleans Saints in the National Football League. I think ultimately, like I said, this was a move that Derek Carr wanted to make so he could set himself up elsewhere. So it would not surprise me once next season it wouldn't surprise me if he's already looking for another team. I think ultimately he retired himself from the Saints so that he did not have to deal with the sideline antics and whatnot, because now with him officially retired, he can sit at home, but he's also, working the phones. So it wouldn't surprise me by the end of next season early that he's got a new home. It could ultimately be the Jets. It could ultimately be the Steelers. Unless the Steelers, like I've said on a previous show, unless they get the top 5 pick and, Arch Manning's their guy. But breaking news, Derek Carr is no longer a Saint. He's retired. His as of now, temporarily putting his career in the books. That's going to do it for us now at Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Make sure you put your name down in the comments if you are a new sub and you're joining the Gridiron Gab Pro Style family. Make sure that you also make your comments known. Please be nice and let them be constructive criticisms if you don't like them, but all importantly, be nice. Make sure you join the Gridiron Gab Pro Style group on Facebook, as well as joining the webpage, the Gridiron Gab official Gridiron Gab Facebook page, so you can be a part of all the things that I will be posting. If you got comments, if you got questions or ideas for the show, please drop them down there as well, and feel free to jump in our inbox. Finally, make sure you go to Mr. CeeLo on Instagram, and so you can join in on all the shenanigans that I will be caught up in. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.
But behold, there is a warm breeze that comes from the west. The blazing sounds of victory fuel their everlasting quest. It is a call to arms, for they are here. An army that has the will to challenge and the will to dare.